My name is Xerxes, and today I'm going to be talking about the Westward times and the Cotton Academy. In those days, it was pretty rough and hard. Let's begin with discovery. Now, the discovery is really important to understand. Why? Well, because it was discovered in the 19th century. Most importantly, because of the gold rush. A lot of people wanted to see the gold rush expand even way greater than before. And in those times, it was pretty hard just to expand something greater. Keep in mind it was 1849 when people realized that. So you can say around the 19th century. That helps the most and efficient. Now the expansion. Expansion was very important around this time too. But because other settlers found about 8 new different states, which were really important around this time, around 1849. Well, just because of the gold rush, which was really important towards others, and it did help out back then until right now. So that's very important to keep in mind, and it's a very, 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 very important fact for that fun fact for this time. Now let's move on to something else because the expansion was better. But in 1840. Now, 1840 was one of the most important things. That's when the land barely started getting expanded. Where people look into the new ways of the land, looking for gold, something important just for the life. And also, people wanted to make money and make something even more greater for their own lifetime and being. A lot of people wanted their lands. 1840 was an important time in people's lives. That's until they started making other things, which was really good too. Now, when they started making other things, the railroads was really important too. They're in construction. They're transcontinental. They helped out a lot. They help you out travel. But more importantly, they help out others to get jobs around that time. People were honestly looking for jobs around the railroad times and the railroad building when the railroads were getting built, and people were looking for jobs and many ways to support themselves. To live around those times. I can say around the 19th century is one of the difficult times for others. But I also believe that too in the 19th century, technology was getting greater and bigger. As we can see, that little train and image that I have right here in front, which was really important to help. I like it, but 19th century, I'm going to say, was really important. The railroad times. They did help out a lot. Moving on. Now, the government wanted to support that. The government is very important around this time too. The government, our government today is something else, but our government back then in the 19th century actually supported the railway, I'm going to say, Pacific Railway and the Homestead Act, which was very important in 1862. I personally want to say it's important, and it did help out overall, which the government back then just wanted to make a change, and I honestly believe that it was actually greater than before and after, which was really surprising, I want to say, honestly. But the government really did support a lot of things. Keep that in mind. They did support things. So let's move on to something even more better. Now, something even more greater. After the government, culture messaging. Now, this culture messaging is very important. Many American migrants were convinced through cultural messaging, that American civilization was divinely ordained to the manifest destiny. When I'm saying manifest destiny, is meaning something greater towards that American dream. I want to say something greater towards that American dream, just something better. They convince others that here's a better life for you. Here's something greater. And a lot of people really fell for that, and I honestly do believe that a lot of people fell culture messaging just for something better for their life, and that's important to understand. Culture messaging, don't forget that word. That word, you don't really see that word often, but it does help you realize what's even greater for life, and it has been, and it always will. Okay, so now you know a little bit about culture messaging. I know my explanation is kind of different, but a lot of people search up things and it do help a lot. Okay, moving on. The U.S. government wow, the U.S. government is very important too. That's one of the most important things to understand. Everything I'm talking about today is important. The U.S. government, honestly, around those times, started treating Native Americans differently. The government cast them as their own states. So they wanted Native Americans to basically become Americans and force them. If not, they will face extinction. Around that time, our little U.S. government, you could say government either way, they just wanted Native Americans around that time in the 19th century, wanted Native Americans to live like an American, which a lot of people didn't like as much, I can tell, but they did help out then a little bit. Native Americans actually did something for our century, but overall, Americans just wanted Native Americans to become something greater, which I truly understand. Let's move on to the next topic. Now, the Native Americans. The Native Americans are honestly would, scare settlers. Anyone that was enroaching, and I'll say enroaching meaning just searching around for new lands and stuff. They basically just wanted to stop, American settlers to basically take their own land because Native Americans knew that Americans were taking their lands. But after that, when people discovered the gold rush, they just started making their own land. Like, for example, now not a lot of people know about this, but the land that people also discovered by making gold rush were in Black Hills of South Dakota, which was really important in that time, honestly, guys. This is a really important fact. It's just important for others to understand and to visualize and to see something greater in their life. Native Americans honestly wanted to change the world. That's what I believe too still. They were something else and something greater. Now let's move on to something even more. After the Native American incidents, the U.S. Army. Wow, the U.S. Army, basically, the U.S. Army didn't even like Native Americans. They wanted to extinct them as well and change their ways of living, which people didn't like at all to see, which I truly understand why. Which I truly understand why people didn't like them, but in a way, the U.S. Army just wanted to extinct the Native Americans because they always assumed that they were up to no good, which they really were up to good, but the U.S. Army just likes wiping out things that they see in front of them. I don't know why, but they're just like that. To me, I call them little jerks. The U.S. Army, they're still kind of jerks, but they do protect the country and serve. So that's something respectfully we have to do and say towards them. Now let's move on to something else. After that, the Chinese Exclusion Act. Ooh, that one was very important around that time too. Basically, the China Exclusive Act, all the immigrants that came. Look at just all the immigrants that came and searching for a new life. Like, that was the most important thing that they wanted to see, that they wanted to hear for others. The Chinese, they wanted a new life. Like, everyone, like every non-American that don't come here, that doesn't live here, just want something better. And it's really important to understand why the Chinese Exclusion Act was important. Basically, the Chinese Exclusive Act was signed for prohibiting all immigrations of Chinese laborers, which changed the way on how people work today and back then. But they still didn't treat others as the same, which was truly insane to understand why they didn't want to do that. I don't know why. Let's move on. Lewis and Clark. These two are the most important people. Why? They discover a lot of things. Like, they're really important people. Basically, Lewis and Clark, on May 1804 to September 1806, discovered expeditions. They started traveling. They had their own goals. Like, their goals were, their mission was to explore unknown territories, establish trades with Native Americans, and harmful the sovereignty of the United States in the region. One of their goals was to find a waterway from the U.S. to the Pacific Ocean. You know, they had a long effect, but the impact of the Lewis and Clark expedition involved the considerable knowledge the explorers gained during the course of the journey regarding the geographic, telepathic features of the terrain and the peoples who populated it. In effect, the native tribes who proved so helpful in facilitating the groups. So basically, they wanted to make a change, and they had a route. They had a route to the Missouri River, to the headwaters, to the Pacific Ocean, Columbia Rivers, and those three are the main, as I can say. Now let us move on to the next little topic that I have right here. Let's make a history recap about the westward expansion. So basically, the westward expansion. Our former president, Thomas Jefferson, believed that the nation's future depend on its westward expansion in 1803. The Louisiana Purchase took place, doubling the size of the country. By 1840, almost 7 million Americans had migrated westward in hopes of securing land and being prosperous. Just looking for something better. Everyone wanted better land, but remember, the Native Americans had their lands regulated, took by from other people, which was really a sad thing to see, in my opinion. But overall, it went pretty smooth and well, as today. I don't know why, but let's move on. Cotton. Wow, cotton picking was very important. Cotton was at its time, at its prime. Cotton has so much fashionable and valuable towards others. We still use cotton as today too, and it's still unbelievable how cotton really works. Even back then, how there was a little machine for it. Cotton was one of the craziest times of their life for other people, which changed history, which changed the course of history, like forever. But moving on from cotton to the farmland. Before all the little farm stuff and everything that changed, there was something very important. Back then, tobacco was very valuable, but not too valuable to a point that by the 1990s, started losing their value towards tobacco, and people were really interested towards cotton. Cotton was like a textile that exploded around the world because people wanted the nice fashion, the nice outfits, the nice looking way of using cotton, or abusing it even more. They abuse cotton for others, which to me is a really sad point in life. Let's move on. Watch. Great Britain had one of those factories, one of the huge cotton factories, but they didn't get their supplies from people. They actually got it from slaves, which was pretty sad to see. Like the cotton, blew up and had everything perfectly. They had factories, they had ways of changing life and making things way greater than before. But cotton, was a thing in Great Britain, was one of the hugest things. It helped market other places. But it's still a sad thing to see. Let's move on, like slavery. It basically made slavery towards others. They had slaves pick cotton off with their own hands and collect it towards the baskets. Just for them, they used slaves just for them to make their own money. Which to me is a pretty sad fact to know. That slavery still was there. Well, it was still there in the 19th century, a little bit more. But they used slaves to pick up cotton and use it for clothing for other people or for richer people. They abused slaves. They abused the African Americans, which was really a sad time to do, honestly. Let's moving on to something. They use slaves for money. Obviously, slaves are for money. That's what they use. They use them, just use them to pick the cotton. They just use them, completely use them. Slaves are always picking up cotton, making their living, thinking they're making a living, which they were dying for something that weren't even getting paid for, which is really sad. Which is a sad thing even to say to begin with, but it was just all for the money. They all went straight towards the money, which wanted to help expand the world and others, which it didn't. The cotton factory eventually failed. But there's a new life in the being, which also created marketing. As in today's, as we see marketing, how people always market their business, how they always change the ways, how they want to make something better, this and that. It's always something always there with marketing. Marketing was the thing. When people heard about the cotton, people wanted to copy the idea about the cotton picking. So basically they made, low minimum wage pays for people that wanted to work and basically work as a slave for something little that they should be working for something greater. Which is a really sad thing to know overall. But life goes on and it grows bigger and bigger for something better. That's why after marketing up in the South, people knew that there were more workers up there. Known fact, they wanted to get more slaves just for more jobs, more different things, more ideas, which is a really sad thing to see, which I didn't, enjoy reading at all, which is, the saddest part to hear, honestly. And I know my narration isn't that good, but, I know some things, pretty well, but not all. But I do understand the concept of everything and how everything flows and then how everything goes, That's how it was up in the South. That's how things changed. That's how things even grew as in one. It's a true fun fact. There's a true thing to say, and honestly, that's how things really worked. People just wanted to use others, even for their own idea and something greater. That's why, as in today, I say, the marketing business is pretty evil. It's all in the money. Money doesn't go with you when you die. But overall, they use slaves for the cotton picking, which was a really sad thing. The ending of their time being is them wanting something greater towards their life. But yeah, and I hope you guys enjoy this. This was Air T signing off. Thank you guys.